physical and financial loss both hurt a lot. Have you had a situation where you had to face both of these together? Hey, what's up guys? Abhishek here from AV Studio. We're going to talk about something very serious today. Something that every arowana keeper or any other fish keeper or aquarium hobbies, fish hobbies, whether they are freshwater hobbies or saltwater hobbies, they come across. A heartbreaking situation where our beloved pet is unwell, is sick. People who keep other pets like dogs or cats, they have veterinary doctors all over the place. But in case of us, we keep these fish, we love them, but when they fall sick, it is very hard to find a professional who can help cure them. I have approached veterinary doctors and the answer I've got from them is that they don't cure fish. So that's a bit surprising, but that's true. At least in India, it's very hard to find a fish doctor, as you may say. So today what I've attempted to do is researched online in a few places, and I've tried to kind of gather the top 10 Arowana diseases as per my understanding, and I've tried to kind of compile them together and put them under 4 main headers where we talk about what causes the disease, how can we prevent it, if at all it's preventable, what are the symptoms that we need to look for to identify the disease, and if there's any treatment, what can we do. This is purely based on information available on the internet and also some of my experiences that I have gathered over the last many years of fish keeping and the last 2 years of arowana keeping. This particular video on Arowana diseases. There's a reason why I've kept my laptop right in front of me so that I could keep referring to the research that I've done. So I'll keep looking at it and talk you through the main diseases that I thought as per my understanding. Okay. The diseases that I've picked up for this particular video are cloudy eye, drop eye, dropsy, swim bladder disease, gill flap curl, gill rot or any sort of gill infection, columnaris or fin rot, external injuries, anchor worms, and barbel infection. I think these are the top 10. If you have anything else in your mind, please write down in the comment section and we can discuss the same. So let's start with cloudy eye. Let's look at what are the possible causes of cloudy eye. So cloudy eye is mainly caused due to eye injury because of bad handling. And also what I've noticed is most of the diseases are mainly or some form of the other, there is a connection to bad water quality, and cloudy eye is no different. So there is a connection to bad water quality. Also there could be physical injury that may lead to cloudy eye, and also if there's a hyperproductive slime due to some sort of irritation or poisoning. Okay, so these are mainly the causes. Can we prevent cloudy eye? Yeah, if you can avoid a lot of handling of the fish. That ways we are reducing the chances of any injury happening. The other way to try and avoid any sort of physical injury, because that being one of the causes of cloudy eye, would be to have appropriate tank mates. So let's not have tank mates who bother the arowana or who could stress out the arowana, which in turn could spook the arowana, and then there could be a physical injury which could eventually lead to cloudy eye. Was something which is most important, keeping our tanks clean, maintaining the water parameters, doing regular water changes. So these are some ways that we can prevent cloudy eye. Now if it happens, how do we identify that we are looking at cloudy eye? So one of the ways is that one or both, but mostly it's one of the eye, could start looking a bit cloudy or whitish, and eventually it could become moldy. And also there could be swelling in the eye, and then there could be some white bluish foreign matter over the eye which could look like a membrane hanging. I'm putting these photographs as I'm speaking, so that you can have a look at what cloudy eye is. Something very common, I'm sure most of you know about it. The treatment seems to have certain stages. At an initial stage, most people seem to be saying that we need to do about 1/3 to 1/4 of water change, maintain a water temperature of around 30 to 33 degrees Celsius, and add salt and just observe your aroma. If the condition improves, then you continue doing the water changes every third day, because after you do the first bit, then you observe for a couple of days to see if there's an improvement. If there's an improvement, then you do water changes every third day, about 25%, and then continue adding salt till the cloudy eye completely subsides. If it's gone to a slightly more advanced stage, then obviously medications are required. I am personally not a very big fan of medications. I try to avoid it, not because I don't trust medications, but a couple of reasons. One, I'm no doctor, so I wouldn't know which medication to give to the fish. The second reason being, just as in human beings, any sort of medications do have some sort of side effects. Similarly, I'm sure for fish there would be certain side effects. So I tend to avoid medication as much as I can, but then there are situations where you would have to administer some sort of dosage of some medication. And in this case, the one that really came up everywhere that I looked for is the anti-cloudy eye, which is by Ocean Free, and seems like a good medicine that everybody's talking about, and it's available all over the internet. And then medication can be stopped once this subsides. What a few websites have said is, for full recovery from cloudy eye, severe ones that is, it takes 3 to 4 months, sometimes 5 months. And once recovered, the injured eye or the eye that had the cloudy eye actually look a little smaller, and then eventually they would look fine. So that's cloudy eye. It's not a pretty sight, and it could prove fatal as well. My arowanas have had cloudy eye, but not very severe ones. I have generally treated them with salt, and it's worked for me. The second one is drop eye, and drop eye is something which is extremely common in arowanas, at least in silver arowanas, and I've also seen quite a lot of Asian arowanas having drop eye as well. Drop eye, I'm sure all of you know, one or both of the eye would actually come out of the socket, and there will be a tilt. The severity of the tilt would depend on how much the eye is looking downward. Okay, so there are various factors or causes why an arowana may develop a drop eye. Namely 4 that I found on the internet. They are environmental factors, impact, diet, and genetics. Environmental factors would mainly be if there are any attention grabbing sources within 2 meters of the arowana tank. The arowana would tend to look towards it, and if it is up towards the downward part from where they look, because they're a top swimmer, and then if there's something within 2 meters at a lower level than the eye level, then they tend to look that direction, and then eventually it would create a drop eye. Okay. It could also be as a result of a small tank cramped, and they're trying to look in a particular direction which is lower than the level, eye level, then it probably could lead to drop eye. One of the other things that could happen, and it's quite common, is arowanas are jumpers. I've spoken about it in one of my previous videos as well, that they are water monkeys, and in our tanks, if they jump or they hit something hard, which is the top of the tank or the sides of the tank, it could result in the eye dislocating from the socket and could cause the tilt and create drop eye. Diet is a major factor, and I firmly believe that majority of the arowanas that have drop eye is due to diet. So in the wild, arowanas generally look upwards, and then they go for the diet, their food. So they're all anyways looking upwards. And the other thing is, there's a lot of activity or exercise happening in the wild, because there's a lot of place to move around. Whereas in our case, in our tanks, there's a very cramped space. Even if you put the biggest tank around, probably put 8 feet, 10 feet. That's generally never enough for keeping such a big fish. Of course, the fact that people say that it should be 3 times the size of the arowana and all of that, that's all that is great theoretically, but the fact is it's a fish and they would want larger space to swim around and have enough exercise. Now, when I talk about exercise, it's common sense. If you're going to put a lot of fatty food, just like human beings need exercise, arowanas also need exercise. So there could be the fat deposit behind the eye, and that could lead to drop eye. Also, sometimes the food really falls to the floor of the tank, and the arowana tends to look down and go and take it, and over a period of time they tend to look downwards and have the drop eye. Genetics could be one of the other reasons. It's pretty straightforward. Genetically, if the fish that you have has a history of drop eye in its line, in its lineage or pedigree, then it probably would have drop eye. So these are some of the causes of drop eye. How could you prevent them? Well, start giving protein pellets, avoid fatty foods, have more tank mates in the tank, which will keep them active and they will move around. Avoid sudden movements in front of the tank, which would scare them or spook them, and then they would hit something and it would be a physical injury resulting in a drop eye. So these are some of the ways to prevent it. I've also heard people putting colorful ping pong balls on the surface of the water where the arowana keeps looking at it. It's not worked for me, but I'm sure it may work for others, so no harm in giving it a try. Certain ways in which you could try and reverse, so it may not be reversed, but try and reverse drop eye. One way is to put it in a fiber tank where you can't really see around anywhere, and the only place they'll be looking is upward, so that could correct the drop eye. And for the exact same reason, if you have a fish tank and you've covered it all sides including the front, they'll start looking up, so that's another way. The last way, that there is a more complicated way, is not something you and I could probably do and requires professional help, is surgery, wherein the excess fatty layer behind the eye is surgically removed so that the eye is restored. So that's drop eye. Then we're going to talk about dropsy, a very, very dangerous disease in which it is basically a bacterial infection of the kidneys, and it could also result from physical injuries causing bacterial infection because of the stress, as a result of also bad water quality. What it looks like really is where from the 5th to the 8th scale, mainly in the initial stage, the scales would open up. Now, why would they open up? Like I said, it's a bacterial infection of the kidney. Now, if the kidney is affected, it is not able to excrete excess water, which results in swelling up of the abdominal area, as a result of which the scales would protrude out and could look like a pine cone. There could be blood or redness at the edge of the scales. Sometimes the scale could drop off and then exposing the fish's body, which could result in decay and could be fatal to the fish. One way to prevent it, and one of the most important ways to prevent it, is to have absolutely good water quality. And again, not startle the arowana, not scare it, not stress it, because stress could be the #1 enemy of our aquarium fish, because that leads to lower immunity and hence bacteria and various parasites could attack them. The way to treat dropsy is to add magnasalt to the water and increase the temperature up to 32 to even 34 degrees Celsius. Do regular water changes to ensure that the water quality is really, really good, and do it every 3 to 4 days. Add some sort of a copper sulfate medication. I'm not sure about the chemistry around it as to how would copper sulfate help with dropsy, but possibly it could have some sort of an effect on the bacteria. And last but not the least, there is a medication available in the market that's anti-dropsy. The next one is also something very, very common, swim bladder disease. Swim bladder basically is a bladder which takes care of the balance of the fish. It regulates the osmotic pressure of the water and helps the fish swim upright and control its movement. There are times when the swim bladder could be affected because two main reasons. One, it could be due to constipation, which causes an impingement of the swim bladder, and of course another reason could be an infection. The way to prevent it is to stop feeding food which is difficult to digest. Okay, and also if you're feeding stuff which has got dangerous parts like sharp pinchers. So then in that case, it will be difficult for them to digest. So avoid feeding that kind of food, avoid overfeeding, and also maintain good tank parameters. So that really, if you've noticed that every time I've been talking about any of these illnesses or diseases, water parameters, maintaining water quality seems to be the common factor here. So as long as we keep our waters clean, most of the illnesses or diseases can be prevented, is what I honestly feel. And how you can keep your water clean, for that you could watch one of my videos that I put a couple of days back. That was more a comparison between a sump and a canister filter. I think that's a very interesting video for you to watch to understand how can you keep the water clean. Symptoms for swim bladder disease or illness or swim bladder failure or infection could be multiple. The Arowana could be swimming nose down, tail up, could be swimming upside down, unable to stay upright, could be floating or could be sinking. Anything that disbalances the Arowana. Treatment is should be adding salt, like some sort of Epsom salt. Magnesol seems to be the brand of choice all over the internet whenever I read, but that's fine. If Magnesol works, that's something you can definitely use, along with keeping the water temperature at about 32 degrees Celsius. Water level needs to be reduced to reduce the pressure on the swim bladder, because that's the one that regulates the pressure, as I mentioned. And then you can also use something called a yellow powder and do a water change of the same 25 to 30% every 3 days. That seems to be also one of the most common things. While maintaining water parameters is the common preventive measure, water changes to regular water changes rather as a treatment method also seems to be a very common thing. So that was about swim bladder. Moving on to the next one, which is the Arowana gill flap curl. So that's where the gill of the Arowana curls. The major cause could be, again, water condition due to rotting food particles, uneaten food excretions, high presence of ammonia nitrate and nitrite. My previous video on sump versus filter also talks about a nitrogen cycle in the water. I'm leaving a link up here for you to watch that video, because that is an excellent video for you to know how the nitrogen cycle works and how does a sump and a canister filter really manage that nitrogen cycle in our aquariums. Okay, there could be drastic changes of temperature could also lead to gill curl, and if you're using a power head with very high flow, that could also result in gill curl. Okay, prevention, needless to say, you need to maintain good water temperature, water parameter, maintain a constant tank temperature and cleanliness, and you have to ensure there's enough swimming space for the Arowana. That's one of the ways to prevent it. Symptoms, basically the gill movements become irregular, breathing becomes abnormal, the gill covers become concave. So I'm showing you some pictures there which will help you understand what I mean, and it could curl upwards, causing the gills, the gill cover could curl upwards, causing the gill to be exposed. The fish will constantly put its head out of the surface of the water, and it will lose its appetite. Now, because the gill is exposed, so obviously there could be further infections in there. Try multiple things as far as the treatment of this illness is concerned. Some of the most important things that can be done is, of course, do water changes, 20% water change every 2 to 3 days, increasing oxygen levels in the tank, adding some coral sand to the filter media could help as well. You can create a strong current, a strong opposite current if the situation is a little bit more severe, and there could be a 50% chance of a cure if you increase the flow rate. In a final stage where the gill covers actually become hardened, that's the stage where surgery is required, and it's best to then reach out to a professional who could perform this. Well, that's gill curl. So those were the top 5 illnesses of Arowana that I kind of gathered together and put together and tried to put some information in front of you, which I'm hoping will be useful. There are 5 more that we want to discuss, but we're going to take that up in the next episode of this video. which will most likely come in tomorrow. So please consider subscribing if you haven't already subscribed. And till we get to the part 2 of this video, thanks for watching. Peace.